Hey everybody, it's Diane Gibbs, and we had a little malfunction, so everybody's live. Hey Carrie, everybody's live. Rob, Russ, Thomas, Kaya or Chaya, I'm not sure. Eric. Jason, good to see everybody. Rob, if you want, I just put a link over in the chat, so you can actually click that if you want, and then you can. You don't have to worry about anybody, seeing you if you don't want to. But that's what we're doing today. I'm sorry, it's a crazy day here, and I had a bad dream about it, but at least we can see each other and hear each other. So if you want to click that link, you can be on it like that. So anyway, this is Joseph Alessio. He's awesome. He's just moved from Detroit to Denver, or pretty recently. So give us a little background of what you do, and if somebody missed the first video, and I will share a link. So go, Joseph.
Hey, so yeah, I'm an illustrator and designer. Sorry, I'm laughing because everyone in the chat box has my name on their comments there. But, sorry. So I don't know who's saying what. But anyway, I'm an illustrator and designer. I focus on type and lettering, particularly, fresh concepts and media. Recently been doing a lot of animated work as well. And I'm originally from Detroit. I come from a large family. I just moved to Denver a couple of months ago, so I'm enjoying it out here. In the last episode, we talked a lot about process, self-educating, learning as you go, dealing with stress and disappointment, things that go wrong, working through them, and all those sorts of things. So you can check out that episode if you want to hear about a little more of the background there. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to try to tweet out the correct thing as well. So, all right. So I'm sorry for the technical difficulty today. It's great to see everybody a little live, so I appreciate it. So, all right. So, talk a little bit about growing your craftsmanship skills, growing your business. Let's start with that. Growing your craftsmanship skills, because how long have you been loving letters, I guess?
Oh man, yeah, that's a long story, I guess. It kind of goes back to being a kid, and my older brother was doing calligraphy, and he had a few calligraphy books, and I really enjoyed them, and so I would read them just for fun, and I'd read about various sorts of black letter. I'd read about uncials, majuscules, and minuscules, and everything, and it was really nerdy stuff, but I'm really a nerd at core, and so I love the historical and really just it's fascinating to me. And so I would, but I'm left-handed, and I didn't really have proper tools for a left-hander, and so I would end up drawing these historical letter forms instead of writing them with a proper writing tool like a parallel pen or pointed pen or something like that. And then I in my teens I started getting interested in graffiti, which is also very heavily lettering related as well, in a very vernacular form, and sometimes illicit. But the letter forms are really intriguing. And then I started learning more about type and design in high school, and I knew I wanted to be a designer. But then I kind of fell in love with the letters behind it all. And when I realized that lettering was a thing, that people do and have done for centuries, it was really just kind of an epiphany for me, and I thought that's really what I want to focus on. So I might have a broad variety of interests, but lettering and type in particular is what I really enjoy the most.
So you've been doing a ton more animation, like you said, and most of these are video animation. So you also have a music background, and you play a lot of other instruments. I actually think that's probably a really good combination for going with the animation, because you can think about things, and music is really in different segments. And you think of a whole piece, and you think of I am not a music person, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm saying. Do you think that that's added to helping you in the animation or not?
I really think it has in some ways. It's definitely informed my, appreciated aesthetics, things that I really enjoy. It's had a really big impact on other areas of my life as well, and really feeds into, I think, how I design. I'm not sure if I'm really detail oriented, but I have a deep appreciation for the minutiae behind, things, and you see a lot of that in type and lettering as well. It's very, it's very heavily dependent on tiny little details. And similarly with playing an instrument, particularly a stringed instrument, I think that's definitely, part of where I acquired a love for tiny details.
Right.
So, and then animation, it's like a progression, similar to music. And I think that, that could definitely have had an effect on how I see motion as well, just in, the progressive aspect.
Yes. Okay, so I'm getting text from Rob wanting me to send him the link on Facebook. Yes, I will. I'm going to send Rob that link right now on Facebook. Okay, so while I send Rob this link, can you tell us about, like, from when you started to where you are now, because the animation you haven't always done the animation, and again, it's just a craftsmanship and skill. So and your lettering, how long do you think it took you to get, and how much were you having to practice to really be a master craftsman?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because I don't feel like a master craftsman yet. I feel like I could practice for a few more decades and still have a lot more to learn. But that's the beauty of something like this, where it's a study that people invest decades in. Like, Herman Zopp, who passed away recently, earlier this year, he was still, designing type at, in his 80s and everything. It's something that you never really lose a love for if it really fascinates you. And so, there's the old adage of 10,000 hours required to become a master at something. I've been really aggressively studying type and lettering, I guess, for probably about 5-6 years now, something like that, with kind of a history going back into high school and even before. And it definitely takes a lot of practice. I feel like the practice is really indispensable. But yeah, it's been a lot of years, and I still have a lot yet to learn. But of course, you learn so much, if you really apply yourself. So that's definitely, what I've been doing. And the same thing with animation. Of course, I fiddled around making animations with, like Microsoft Paint back in high school, had fun with that. And then kind of revisited it, because I had sort of an idea of, what would it look like if I took, the aspect of communication that you get writing letters, and then, brought the aspect of motion into that and kind of marry the two, because you read in a progression, you write in a progression, so why not actually, view the progression in a way that, makes sense and is entertaining, visually interesting. So I've been more interested in that over the past 6-8 months or so, and I've been kind of trying to bring the lettering work into a more, a more live atmosphere, I guess, where you're bringing in the aspect of motion that's eye-catching, and you kind of see it in a progression.
And most of these are working like on Instagram, so they're within the 12-second kind of frame. It's not like you're like doing these 1 minute, 8-minute animations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I have the equipment necessary to do like an 8-minute animation right now, but I'm kind of heavily basing these off of the needs for social media, things like that, which provides almost welcome constraints because you get to really have fun with it. It's more playful, and it's less intimidating, and there's so much room for exploration there that I really enjoy. So I've been kind of gearing it towards social. Most of my animations have been, you've probably noticed, in a square format for that reason. Of course, with Instagram shaking things up a few days ago, now I'll have a little more room to play with different ratios, aspect ratios.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely focused on the social media sort of as a medium.
So I can, since we have so many people in live, I can't share my screen on my other computer, like they've outed me, but I can share my computer screen here. So whenever you want me to do that, I can do that and show some of the animations. You want to do that now, and I can show one of the ones you want me to see, or do you want to look at all of them real quick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen really quick, and hopefully it won't be really messy. And it'll be lovely. Hang on. Yeah. Okay. So you can sort of see a little bit of everything else. But this is the first one. Do you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, so this piece is actually an animation that I haven't officially released yet. I created it to promote the Circles conference. I'll probably be seeing you, some of you guys here or there in about a week now. But I created this animation to promote the conference. And these are the 3 separate compositions that appear in the animation. And they all integrate into each other. But you'll get to see the animated one soon. And I'm excited to show that because it turned out pretty good. Yeah,
So
I've had a lot of
what
fun
are you
with that.
using to make the animations? Are they all just animated GIFs, or are you using something else?
Well, I've done a little bit of work with like Apple Motion or After Effects, but really not a whole lot. I kind of gravitate toward the sort of handmade lo-fi sort of approach, and so most of them are just animated GIF based. I export most of them right out of Photoshop with really little else. It's definitely like a frame by frame, and then export it from there. So it's very time intensive, but it's a fun process.
So I love this one. I don't know if this was you just moved and you were like, I'm going to play with this paint or this tape or whatever. But do you want to talk about this one a little bit? Because this seems like a lot more stages than some of the other ones that you've done.
Yeah, this one was pretty intensive. I had just moved, and I was a little stressed out. There was a lot that I had to deal with moving into the apartment and everything like that. And I painted the entire apartment in a weekend or so, and I was exhausted. I was feeling stressed out, and I just wanted to do something fun and relaxing. So I took what I was doing that weekend, which was painting the apartment, and decided to have fun with it. So I took painter's tape and just taped it all over the wall. This is probably about, I'm going to say like 5 feet square or so.
Wow.
And then rolled it off progressively and photographed it and animated it in Photoshop. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. And kind of
that's a lot of pictures, right? I mean, because there's so many changes that to me this is the most. Well, I don't know. The leaf one with the violin is pretty intensive as well. It's like you're getting more intensive. I think you could do an 8-minute one.
I probably could. I'm working up to it.
All right, let's look at the next one. So this is your Skillshare, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but give them a little preview.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I just sat down with Skillshare to do a little class based on a violin project that I actually did last year that was really popular. And so they approached me to do this class. And so it was a fun thing to do. I kind of came up with a very brief syllabus, I guess, but it was mostly improv. And basically went through my process in creating this violin piece on camera. And so this one is very similar to the one that I did last year. But I was actually being videoed while creating it. So yeah, the Skillshare itself is about a half-hour long, 35 minutes. Goes through my process, and it's built around this project, of course. But I actually I pack a lot of really intensive lettering info in there that a lot of people overlook, or it's just not out there easily accessible necessarily unless you go to a workshop with a master or something like that. And so there's a lot of info in there about overshoot, optical corrections, things like that you want to be careful with when you're doing lettering that you want to look really good. But then of course you can kind of take that knowledge and apply it just by creating something fun and vernacular like this violin piece that I did that I have sitting in my bedroom now as a decoration, and it looks pretty good there. So yeah.
It does. It looks great. But you also did the little radio as well, right?
I did, yeah. That was a really fun project that I did probably about 1.5 years ago now. Jake Mize was putting together this project where he is actually building these boomboxes from hand or by hand, from scratch. He got the audio components and did the industrial design, and had these wooden boxes laser engraved, and I did a design that I really wanted to take advantage of, the detail that you can get with laser engraving, a lot of really small lines, really sharp, tiny details. So I really packed it with detail. It's very, almost Rococo in style, and looks really great in the teak wood that he had it engraved in. So yeah, that was really fun. That's also in my bedroom, and it sits in there and provides great entertainment.
So was this something that you did in the computer? You did it by hand and then you scanned it in and made it like a vector, and then sent it to because the laser engraver, I'm sure, would have to use a digital file, right?
Yeah, the laser engravers need a vector file, so I sketched it out sort of roughly at first. I always work with really rough sketches to begin with. And then this one is actually a little different from my normal process in that I went directly from a really rough sketch to Illustrator and created it as a vector natively. I usually do a lot of the refinement work by hand, but because this was so highly detailed, I just took it right to Illustrator, to kind of create it in the right environment for the vectors.
Cool, and we're going to give you a link so you can see the, and for some reason this one's not working, but this one is awesome. I can find it on Instagram and send it to you guys. For some reason it's not animating. Sorry, it does. It's super cute. All right, well then there's this one, which is very intensive. I don't know if you did the off the wall first or this one first. Did I lose you? Oh, boogers. Stop sharing. Did I lose you, Joseph? Why can I not hear you? Oh, boogers. Is it on your phone? You dropped. We're going to have to do a part 2 again. Oh, buggers. This is... Anyway, everybody's saying hello in the chat, I guess, before I had to go. All right. No, we're still not. Maybe refresh from your phone. I see you. Yes. I see you too, William. So log out from the phone, Joseph. Oh. His phone may have overheated. Anyway, he's going to maybe plug it in. Anyway, he does awesome work. I was like, oh, the leaf one. Which one took longer, the leaf or the off the wall? Because they're both pretty intense. Oh. Not yet. Nope, not yet. And I'm restarting the phone for audio. I can type in here, though. Okay, do you want to answer that question? I'll make it easy. Was the off the wall longer or the leaf one? Technology, yes, we know. I had a dream last night, just so you all know. I had a dream that I was late. They were both intensive. The leaf one definitely took longer and had so many frames with the individual leaves. It was pretty intensive. So, yeah, we knew. I know what you meant. You can just type in your slang. It's okay. But, yeah, so, but I guess, was it as physically as big? I mean, it seems pretty wide. Was it just about as big? You can nod. We can see that. Okay. So, well, I hope you really like Denver. I have a student who lives in Denver now. I'll have to connect you with her. She's not a lettering person, but she likes lettering. Yeah, this piece was 7 to 8. Oh, I hear you, I think. Yay.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the audio is back online. Sorry about that.
Yay. Okay.
I'll talk to my
So let me go back. Let me go back to sharing my screen and let's talk about that last one. really fast.
Okay.
The leaf one. Okay.
Yeah, so this one I created to promote Carter Sands by the legend Matthew Carter, who designed, Georgia and Verdana and a lot of the early system fonts that you have on your computers. And they wanted something to promote it because it wasn't getting as much attention as it really deserves. And it felt very classical to me in nature, and kind of evoked a I don't know, almost musical. And so obviously my first inclination is to do something Vivaldi-esque, and so I took that as the theme and turned it into the animation based on Vivaldi's Summer from the Four Seasons. And it was about, I'm gonna say, like 7-8 feet wide or so. It was a little bit difficult to photograph in my apartment, but it worked out, and I was able to make it happen, and it turned out pretty fun. So
yeah, it looks great. Well, what kind of leaves did you use?
I'm not even sure, and I think they actually gave me a rash, so I'll probably not be using them again. But I live, really close to a park, so I went out and foraged for a backpack full of leaves, and they came off like a vine. But yeah, so I mean, live and learn, But it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah, it does. It looks great. So, but those are some of, more traditionally, maybe early on you were doing more lettering pieces, so, or just flat lettering pieces. So the animations have really kind of taken off, I think. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to expand maybe some of your conceptual skills and how people could do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would early on. I spent a lot of time learning about the history behind type, and a lot of the little details that you have to pay attention to. I really enjoy the historical stuff like that, and I spend a lot of time on that. But then I realized that it might be really interesting to me, but it might not actually be that interesting to most other people. And so I had to realize, well, I can indulge myself in this area, but if I want to kind of push work in new and interesting ways, I have to step back and look at not just the minutiae, but the big picture. And I was thinking, well, what can I do to apply all of this knowledge that I've amassed, this technical and historical knowledge, all the nerdy stuff, in a way that's more accessible, it's more fun, it's a little more visually interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as you see, there's just so much lettering out there, and kind of the idea of what's good and what's not as polished maybe has really, there's the consciousness is a lot lower, I guess, just because I feel there's a lot of homogeny out there, and I wanted to be less homogenous. So I wanted to, I felt like the animation and everything was a good way to break out in a direction that I hadn't seen used really very much before, and make it interesting in ways that people would like to see. So yeah, that was kind of the idea behind pushing a little more in these directions. Just kind of, I don't know, making it new and interesting again.
Well, and I think you've also pushed yourself just by doing more detailed or bigger, or I mean, you're that off the wall, so many frames, and the Vivaldi one as well. There's a lot that goes into that. How much planning? I know that wasn't one of my questions, but how much planning do you have to do before you start something like that?
There's a lot, honestly. One of the unfortunate aspects of doing this work that ends up being really super time intensive is that I can't put out work nearly as often anymore, just because each of these pieces takes forever. There's a lot of planning involved. You have to, get materials. You have to, in things where you're photographing it, you have to wait for the right light. And sometimes the light changes, while you're taking pictures, because it might take an entire afternoon, and you have to compensate in Photoshop or whatever, frame by frame. So it's very time intensive and takes a lot of planning. But you have to make sure you get out and get everything that you need beforehand. Like with the leaves, actually, it was really interesting. I picked them all, and they were like very soft, and I started arranging them. And as I photographed them, they dried out, and they became really like hard and crispy, and they would break sometimes when I touched them. And so that was an unexpected problem, in like arranging and moving them and everything. So like there are a lot of weird little things that come up like that. Details you have to work with, but you kind of learn as you go.
Maybe that went with the Four Seasons Vivaldi thing, like.
That's true. Yeah, turning into the autumn.
Right. Conceptually, it was brilliant.
Yeah, if you look really closely, you can see the leaves like turning brown. So.
I think that's pretty clever, actually. Yeah. All right, so what does a normal work week look like? And Rob had to step out, so he said you were awesome. So you rock, he says. So
yeah, thanks for showing up.
So what does a normal week or a normal day kind of look like? So, and I want to know, when you got your apartment, was the lighting really important and when you chose that apartment?
It was. I wanted to get a place with, windows. So I have a window here and a window behind me that you can see. So that's really great. Unfortunately, it's facing east, and there's a pretty significant overhang. And so there are really only a few hours that work well for taking pictures. So I have to be careful to arrange days around that if I'm doing something. And I also often ramping up to photographing takes a while. And so by the time that I've, gotten everything set up and I'm ready to photograph, it's 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and the light's on the other side of the building. And so it's, really dark, and, so I have to be really careful about that. But the windows were definitely an important thing in, finding a place. But I didn't count on the really big overhang. But yeah, there are ways to work around it.
All right, so what does a day look like when you're going to be maybe just working, not photographing a piece? How much sketching are you doing, or how are you figuring out?
Well, sorry, getting texts.
It's not me.
Yeah. I do a lot of sketching, before working on a project. The days vary a lot, depending on what I have going on. But I usually get up, between 7 and 8, make coffee. I usually don't eat breakfast, usually just coffee. I usually start out, by kind of looking at, news and seeing if anything interesting is going on in the Twitters and everything, in fact, the other day, I think I tweeted about I accidentally overslept yesterday, and I missed most of the Google-related outrage. So that was kind of an interesting, that was okay. There's a lot of, humorous stuff out there, but
I think I read your post, and I was like, oh, what is this Google thing? And then I had some student ask me about it, and I was like, I don't know. So you tuned me in yesterday.
Oh yeah, everyone has opinions, but yeah, I usually start out with catching up on news and social media. Now being in Denver in Mountain Time, I'm a couple hours behind a lot of the people that I used to follow and interact with a lot, and so their days are already well underway by the time that I see what they're talking about. So that's been interesting to note. It has an effect with business as well. You have to schedule calls differently, things like that. But yeah, that's kind of part of the work of being remote. But it works pretty well that way. Just have to be careful with calendars. I usually then start working on sketching or projects, emails, things like that. And I usually don't eat lunch until mid late afternoon, just because I get stuck in whatever I'm working on and don't even think about it for a while. So then I end up eating lunch late afternoon, evening. Usually keep working. I'm trying to be better with time management in that I tend to just kind of focus on work. I could focus on work all night, really, if I let myself. And so I have to try to force myself to set aside time to not focus on work, because it becomes unhealthy, and you burn yourself out after a while. And I've had to deal with that a few times, where it's just like I can't do this all night thinking about work thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So really, you'll work. You would work all day, all night, but you definitely have to try to set yourself time to stop so that you can kind of recharge?
I try to, yeah. It doesn't always work.
Right. Well, deadlines come, you
That's
can't
true.
always control those. So if you're sketching, so when do you figure out time to do side projects? Because it seems like you have side projects going and you're challenging yourself. Some obviously are for clients, but it seems like you're doing some things that are pretty interesting. How do you figure out what you want to do? Do you have a list you're going off of, or do you just get inspired?
Well, I'd like to say I just get inspired, that ideas come to me all the time. I'd also like to say that I'm organized and have a list. It's pretty sporadic, honestly. Sometimes I have an idea that I think of, and then it sits on the shelf for months. I have a few of those that I'm meaning to get to, but then they just don't seem really appropriate at the time. Or maybe they have some, like there's some reason I can't do them right now or something like that. And so they, kind of sit on the back burner for a while, and occasionally I never get to them, which is unfortunate. Sometimes an idea just happens upon me, and that's always fun. But the problem with that is that it's usually, too late, and you have to really rush it to get it out there if it's related to anything else going on, things like that. So I could probably do a better job of planning ahead, with personal projects. But yeah, finding time for them. I spend a lot of time on personal projects. That kind of contributes a lot to the, ridiculous number of hours spent thinking about work.
Right.
But it's often when things are slower, that's a really good opportunity to work on personal projects as well. So it's like you can still be working. You don't have to feel completely unproductive.
Right.
And you're making something great. So.
And you've gotten work from some of those personal projects. It's about you posting and marketing yourself. I mean, if you're never doing, I think as a designer and a freelancer, you really have to set time aside every month, every week to work on some sort of self-promotion project so that you're continuing to market yourself, especially if that's how you're getting your sole income. Do you think that, I mean, because it seems like some of the side projects have led to, I mean, the tax day, I think you just did that, right? It wasn't for a client, right?
Yeah, that was just for fun.
Yeah. But I think that was I don't know if it was one of your first animations. I think of it as one of your first animations. So somebody's like, you look awesome, Joseph. But do you see that you've gotten work, or people have said, hey, they say, hey, I saw this piece and I want you to do either another client project, and they're like, hey, I want you to do something in this same vein, or?
Well, there's been a little of that. I kind of have to push sometimes to try to make it something that I really want to make, because of course the hope is that, you make a lot of work that you really just have fun doing, and eventually people will hire you for it. But of course there's a long process that goes into that. There's a lot of making work that you have fun doing, and you either, nobody hires you for it, or you have to really pitch it to a client pretty aggressively to get them to be as interested in it as you are.
Right.
So there's definitely a process there, and especially as I've kind of just been developing this, I don't know, kind of fusion with the animation this year. I'm kind of waiting to see some of that, come to fruition. I'm doing a lot of pitching, things like that. But it does, you do see it beginning to catch on, which is exciting. Because it's a lot of fun. It's intense, but it turns out great, and something that I can be really proud of. Yeah.
I'm gonna share the tax day animation link if people want to go there. So finally, I guess. So with you also have projects that are series based, and so I always think it's nice to show a client that you can work. You're not just a one-hit wonder kind of person, that you can actually work for them in a whole series. How do you think that's helped you by producing series work?
Yeah, working in a series, it's a lot more time intensive than actually creating a few separate pieces. Like the same number of pieces, because you have to plan ahead a lot more. To sort of a cohesive concept that ties them all together. I should probably do more of that than I have, honestly. I've done a few here and there, and they've really done very well, in terms of social media and everything. So that's, series, I think, are valuable in that,
the repetition, brings a lot of attention. Because, if you just post something once, no one will see it. A handful of people will see it. If you post it twice, you have to post it a few times for, people to really see it and enjoy it. Whereas with a series, you don't have to feel like you're being ridiculous posting the same thing over and over again. You post a different piece, but it's in the same vein, or it's somehow tied to the other, and then people go back and they see the whole thing. So it just kind of makes sense that way, but it requires a lot of planning. So I guess that's the main difference.
Because one of the first, the color was so awesome in the tool one where you were using the tools, and it was like the handles of the wrenches were just so beautiful, and they were this blue, and everything else was gray and silver and black pretty much, and so that was like a really big series. You did I guess you did did you do the whole alphabet, and then you started doing words?
Yeah, I did the whole alphabet. That was a fun kind of preliminary project, and then I kind of took it to the next level with doing a number of really, massive compositions that were really super time intensive.
So on those, it seems like they're huge, like bigger than the 5-7 feet, maybe not. But how do you? What kind of are you using a painter or a photographer's backdrop? Are you on a ladder? How are you photographing those?
The interesting thing about those pieces is that I didn't have a whole lot to work with. I had like a box and a half of tools essentially. And so if you look at them, you'll see like the same tools showing up in a lot of different characters. And so I had to like do really usually just one or two, and most often one letter at a time, and then photograph it. And there was a lot of Photoshop work involved to put it all together. And so of course that means that I only need, I need a much smaller space to photograph it in, because I couldn't have done it really otherwise. They would have been really massive. A lot of these individual letters are like, anywhere from like a foot to 2+ feet tall. Some of the really big ones were like, 2.5 feet, really huge. And so if I were to do it all at once, it would take, a wealth of tools, and they're really huge. I would need a huge studio space. But I relied on Photoshop a lot for that, and just kind of the ingenuity of working with limited resources, which is another thing you learn to do as you go. So that it turned out looking really huge, but I was working in a not very large space.
Well, I think that's really impressive, and that you were able to work within a budget, but also it was the shadowing on those, because the tools are sticking up, and so it was able. I really did. I was like, wow, he's just got all these tools, and so the Photoshop work looks awesome. I think because of that, but the shadows, because I think that would be one of the hardest things, because like with the tools of the trade, which is like the second one down in the whatever over there in the post area, the chat, it's really tight. Your letters are really tight together. So I imagine that is a challenge, but it's really good when you can do it as well as you did.
Yeah, it really was a challenge. I tried to, you're working with natural lighting, of course. I don't really have studio equipment, and so I had to work on it. Like I would start working out compositions, and then I would photograph everything in the afternoon, like between, say 2:30 to 6 p.m. or so. And so the shadows would be all in the same direction, essentially. And of course, they don't all match up. Like the length of the shadows, it varies quite a bit, because, it's like it's going to change over the afternoon. But with a lot of, masking and, a lot of Photoshop work, you can get it all to look really cohesive. The main issue was there was, like when you look at it carefully, you can see slight angles changing, in the vertical aspect, especially since some of the tools are really tall, like the really large sockets. Mm-hmm. They're an inch tall, and so the angle really shows if the camera is shifted at all. And I'm just standing there with the camera. I wasn't using a tripod because I don't have an overhead boom. And so you can see, the angles shifting a little bit. But again, take a number of those, and you'll find enough that match up that you can put it together, and it looks like it was all made at the same time. So.
Well, you did awesome on that, I think. I am super impressed. We're going to go a little over today, if that's okay, like 5-10 minutes, if it's okay. since we had such craziness in the meetings. And we're on number 3. So,
oh, wow.
So, how did you start your business? You started it in Detroit. I think always people want to know, like, oh, I just started. I worked for friends and family, or I just did some pro bono work. How did you get your start, and was it client work or pro bono? Because I think some people just don't know how to start.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started very small. My first job, official job, I did an internship that didn't really equip me very well, for the real world at all. And then I got a job, but I was self-educated, so I didn't have a degree. And it wasn't really a great job. I worked at a small web dev place for a while. And I've never liked web, but I just thought it was like the only way that you could survive as a graphic designer, because everything is web-based now. I didn't really know that you could survive as an illustrator. I didn't really know a lot about ad agencies or anything like that.
Right.
So I did web, and I did not enjoy it, and it was really frustrating, intensely frustrating. And I kind of started developing on the side, doing more lettering work and illustrative work, and I had a few tiny little clients here and there, a few $100 here and there, and it was definitely not to the place where I could survive on it, on what I was making from my freelance thing. But I figured, my job was bad enough that I could probably make it as much on my own, even starting small as at the job. And so I quit the job, and living at my parents' made it possible really to start to develop this business. I acted a lot older than I was, for better or for worse, and I think that helped a little bit, I guess, because I put on a very almost ridiculously professional face online, and was able to kind of develop some client relationships, develop a lot of skills, ask a lot of questions that helped me get started. And starting small, and it takes a while. I've been told that it takes generally like 4 to 8 years to really make a consistent business out of being a freelance illustrator. And that's obviously a chunk of time, but that's just, I'm at probably 4 or 5 years now of really investing in freelancing. And it takes time, everything takes time, but that's just kind of the way it works. So I started really small. Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit about, because you started small, because you've been able to get much bigger clients. You've done some really great work, but then I also really like your small little work too. So to me, you being you're part of a really big family, but you work really well alone. How has that played a part? So what are some of the techniques and skills that you've developed? How did you become super professional acting online? I think that's that's a skill you developed. People thought maybe you were older than what you were. And do you miss anything by working alone? And how? Anyway, that's good enough. Because I don't want to bombard you with so many.
Yeah. Well, I feel like working alone works best for me for a number of reasons. I'm a pretty introverted person. Generally, I grew up in a large family, but that also means that I had to self-educate a lot because we were all homeschooled, all 7 of us kids. And so, one mom, she's very intelligent and hardworking, but she can't teach 7 kids, all at the same time. And so you end up, learning to self-educate a lot. And so I learned to work by myself really from a very young age. It's kind of interesting. A friend has kind of recently turned me on to the Myers-Briggs personality thing. I'm an ISTP, and I read that apparently ISTPs work best on their own.
I'm your exact opposite. I'm an ENFJ. Anyway, that's so funny.
Yeah, but it's like, so it makes sense. It's almost like I'm, I really gravitate toward working on my own. And I can work with people. I can get along with people, collaborate and everything. But I really am at my best, I feel, working on my own. And so it's just interesting seeing that develop in, how I grew up and how I developed business and everything, and then have it confirmed by other people, saying things about, how they view my personality. But yeah, early on, I took myself far too seriously. I'm a very nerdy person. I was introverted, still am introverted. Maybe not very socially adept, and so I just, reverted to acting very professionally, kind of cold and stone-faced online. And so it made me seem like I was a lot older than I was. But I think, I've learned recently to just loosen up and enjoy myself a little more. And you can have a personality. You just become more comfortable with yourself over time. And so I think, acting professional has its place, but I think I did too much of it early on. And I think it might have helped me in ways, and it probably hurt me in ways as well.
Well, I think being an introvert is great, especially when you're working alone and you do really good work. But you've also kind of had to come out of that comfort zone by being social online or going to conferences, and people they're connecting with you on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and then they see you, and then you have to kind of be able to kind of, and you do. I've met you at a conference, so I know you can. You're not like in a corner over there. There's Joseph, right?
Yeah, so early on, the first conference I went to, I really spent a lot of it in the corner, but there were some really great people that were very friendly, and helped, really, that was part of what got me really invested in type, because I went to a dedicated type conference, and, there were just great people there that kind of welcomed me and were really kind, drew me out a little, and that was a really, really interesting experience, being a young guy who is interested, but young and obviously not terribly socially adept. That really made an impression, and I think that's also part of why I'm really invested in type and lettering as a specific area. But then really you go to some conferences and the environment is really warm and friendly. Everyone is open with each other. Everyone is really interested in each other personally. It's not a, shake your hand, pass a business card sort of conference. It's a very, it's really, you go up and hug people, you talk to them about their personal lives, and I think that's really healthy, because I feel like designers often invest themselves so heavily in their work. It's a little bit related to fine arts in that it becomes very personal to people, and so then it's good to remember that we're people first and designers second. And that's been really great, going to some of these conferences, meeting people, people that have similar backgrounds to myself, similar, struggles, similar interests. It's really great, and you learn that there are other people out there that I can really relate to on a very personal level, and it's really refreshing.
So I'm going to wrap it up with one last question. So you kind of hinted at the type conference, or it was a conference that was type focused. And I know, I think it was last week or the week before, you went to TypeCon, and it was in Denver, I think, this year, right? So that was really helpful. You didn't have to fly anywhere. But what was the conference, and were they people that you didn't know anybody when you went, and then you just met people that you had knew online? Or, because I want to give people like the sense of, you can go to a conference by yourself, or you can go with just knowing one or two people. Can you give them kind of a little tips and advice on stuff like that?
Yeah, actually, it was TypeCon a number of years ago, and it was my first design conference that I had been to. I would have to say it's probably, unless you're really interested in type, it's probably not a good first design conference, because it's really nerdy. But of course, it worked well for me because that was me. I just loved it. And it was really interesting to me because I was young. I think I was 20. It was a number of years ago, and I'd never been to a design conference before. I was really naive and not feeling very social. And then all of these amazing people are walking around. Matthew Carter, who obviously is a really type legend. A lot of these people walking around, people like Tobias Freer-Jones are there. These really big names, and you're just in awe of everybody. But then people are really friendly. Type designers as a group tend to be very nerdy, often very introverted. you know, but they're just, it's a really fun bunch of people, and they're very inclusive and welcoming, you know, and they were just really, you know, they drew me out. I met a lot of people that first conference that I have seen every year since at that conference. I've been back every year, just because I enjoy it so much, and it's kind of a priority for me. So yeah, it's absolutely a good idea to go to conferences, even if you know nobody. I knew nobody, and I came away with, you know, a lot of great acquaintances, and then developed those into, you know, real friendships. You know, and it was great seeing everybody, you know, a couple of weeks ago at TypeCon, which was actually in Denver, as you mentioned, and I actually spoke there. I gave a presentation on stencil type, and everyone loved it. Everyone was great. You know, it was fun because I'd been coming for, you know, a number of years consecutively, and so there were a lot of people that, you know, I knew there that had been able to see my development as a designer, you know, and then and even personal development as well. And then there I was, you know, being able to contribute, and it was a great feeling for me, and, you know, everyone else enjoyed it too. So, you know, it was just a great experience.
That's awesome. I mean, I think conferences are great to connect and to make. Sometimes it just solidifies a friendship because you get to spend so much more time with them, and they get to know you, how you sound, and how quick-witted you are, or how not funny you are. If it's my case, I think I'm funny, but I'm not that funny. I know. But you know, those friendships are deepened, I guess. And it's not always about just networking and handing a business card. Yeah. But I think it's about making a connection, and then it's not you're like, I met them, I'll see them next year. It's like, no, you keep up with them, and then some of them become people that you would trust and say, hey, what do you think about this? I need some feedback. And I think that's really important too, because a lot of times when you're working alone, you still need feedback, and now you have kind of these people who you trust, but then you know they're going to give you real feedback instead of just like, oh, good job, kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
That's true, absolutely. And you build real friendships, like you were saying. You know, like and even beyond just the industry aspect, where, you know, feedback is really helpful. But then you also, you know, you build friendships that you can go to people when you need support, you know, when things are going wrong, you know, when you're dealing with depression, you know, all sorts of things, you know, that it becomes really a great network of people that you can rely on, you know, that you can count on to be real friends. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it makes the world a little smaller, for sure. Well, Joseph, we'll have to do a part 3, and we're going to do a test beforehand, and not just 15 minutes. But at least we got it working. But I want to share your link. So tell them a little bit about the Skillshare. So we're sharing Instagram, Twitter, your website, which you also have a blog, and you are a great writer. So, but you have just done a Skillshare just in case anybody missed it, and it launched, I think, yesterday, and I've already watched half of it, and like one of them is like 15 minutes long, and I haven't gotten to that one yet, but I'm right at the one for it. But it's really good stuff.
Yeah, well, the Skillshare, I just released it this week. It's built around creating a project, you know, by lettering on something similar to the violin project I did last year, and the Skillshare. It kind of goes through the process. I basically walk through the process and create the piece on camera, and it's built around creating this fun project that, like in the instance of the violin that I created for it, I have that sitting in my bedroom as a decoration, and it looks pretty great if I say so myself. But so the idea is that you can make something really fun like that for yourself, something that's just enjoyable or meaningful. But I also have a segment in there, and this might be the one you're talking about, that feels like 15 minutes long, where I pack a whole lot of lettering information in there. I talk about, you know, a lot of things like optical correction, overshoot, you know, vertical rhythm, things like that, you know, are really just underlying principles with lettering and type that are really good to know, especially if you're working on something that's really polished. So I pack a lot of great info in there within the context of a really kind of fun and vernacular project. So it's a great mix. It's about 35 minutes long. And you can get a free sign up with that link that Diane just shared. So yeah.
So I just want to say thank you. I'm so sorry that my dream sort of came true and we had technical issues. I appreciate everybody who just stuck around and went through it all with us. I really, really appreciate it. I just want to share a couple links of my stuff. If you want to catch his last episode, you can catch it. All you have to do, if you do a search for him, it will go through to both of his episodes. And Ashley says she signed up for your class yesterday, and she's loving it so far.
Nice.
And she's attempting to do her violin. And you talk about it in the class. Hey, it doesn't have to be a musical instrument. You say it can be a saw. It can be, whatever you like.
It could be anything.
Anything. But it needs to be big enough that you could write on it. Like, right? Pretty much it's not like the end of a Sharpie. You're not going to write on it. And he talks about the tools to use. He talks... really, I mean, this is an amazing gift idea. I think it could be, so now's a great time, because then it could be a great Christmas present and you have a lot of time to work on it. But you do go through some really good basics of typography, so I love that. So thank you for making a great Skillshare class.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to do.
Well, I thought you did a great job. So, and my desk is shaking. Sorry, there's not a hurricane or anything coming through. But so I'm going to share a couple of links. If you want to connect with me, you can always email me at diane@designrecharge.org, or you can do diane@rechargingyou.com. And if you want to check out any of the other blog posts, you can just go and you can search for Joseph's name, and you can see the last one. I did share it earlier in the chat, so you can just scroll down if you want. Also, next week, I think, it's next week I'm taking off because I have a meeting and I couldn't get out of it. But the weekend after that, or the week after that, next week, the Wednesday after, I'm going to be talking about the rapid recharge, so 20 minutes of sharing a little bit of information about how to build long, healthy relationships with clients, so that you have a client that you can stay with for 10 years and keep making good, different creative work. So anyway, I'm really excited that everybody stayed and everybody came, and it was great to see a lot of people live in the bottom, so I really appreciate it. And Joseph, thank you so much for being here and being an awesome inspiration and having awesome work and sharing it with us and just being so flexible with all the craziness that happened. So.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, and have a great Labor Day if you're in America, I guess.
Thanks.
Bye.